welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DiRienzo.
And I'm Miss Joan Marie Musi.
And our guest, Lenni Brenner, the great author and expert.
Welcome, Lenny.
Welcome, Lenny. Expert on so many subjects, among them the Democratic Party and American history. And we have behind us the cover of one of Lenny's books on Jefferson and Madison. And maybe he can tell us which...
the separation of church and state.
All right, which one is Jefferson and which one is Madison?
That's a good question, because the one on the right is Madison.
Right.
The other one, I don't really quite...
Right.
I wouldn't swear to who he is, really. But I didn't put that up there, you know.
Well, most people don't know. More people know who Jefferson is, at least his statue's there in the Jefferson Memorial, than know who Madison was.
You want to know that when they ask people who are the 10 greatest, Madison doesn't even make the list, and he is, called by all historians the father of the Constitution, and he is for sure the author of the Bill of Rights. I mean, you know, it was he presented it, and then, you know, other people made suggestions. So but he's the author. I mean, you know, I mean, it goes to him. You know.
Yeah, interesting. And where was Madison from? What was his state?
Virginia. Both
Virginia.
of them.
Both were from Virginia.
Both slave holders. All right.
Sure.
Okay. I mean, now understand. I mean, Jefferson is one of the most voluminous writers of all time. I mean, nobody could. I mean, it take you a lifetime and a half to read all of Jefferson. Okay,
Right.
He wrote. He had a machine. He invented a machine where he wrote with his goose quill, and a copy came out from another goose quill.
He invented the fax machine.
The fax machine, I mean, on a primitive level, but he invented it. You know, and he wrote with this non-stop. You know, no commas and periods, etc. So after a while, when you're reading him, but you always feel it's coming from him. I mean, there's no
It's like a stream of consciousness.
It's stream of consciousness. It's unbelievable. So it's very impressive. And my attitude is, look, you can criticize him all day and all night. I mean, Jefferson is a slaveholder who, the only slaves of his that he freed were his mistress and their children. All right?
Basically people who were related to him.
Well, I mean, literally.
Well, all these George Washington had, you know, I was out at
but Washington
Vernon,
freed his slaves.
Afterwards.
Every single one was freed in his will. Jefferson, what literally happened with Jefferson, I tell you, it's one of the great historical tragedies. Jefferson was obsessed with how evil slavery was. I mean, you can't find a more severe critic, you know. I mean, it's not only bad for the slaves, it's bad for the slave master. It makes every slave master into a despot, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah, you know.
Which it sure did.
Well, all right, you know, but I mean, this is him talking, you know. I mean, he grew up in that environment, and his attitude is, what the hell's going on,
But
you
he
know?
refused to do anything about it.
No, on the contrary. No, on the contrary. His first bill in the House of Burgesses in the Virginia legislature was a bill permitting the freeing of slaves. It got no heirs. All right. Then the one major contribution on that, that succeeded to a degree, he tried to ban all slavery outside of the original 13 states. In other words, when it would spread, it should not spread into Alabama, it should not spread north of the Ohio River, etc. Right?
Yeah.
The other slaveholders fought him on it, and this is in the period, in the come up to the Constitution. Right? And instead, all he was able to get was the Northwest Ordinance, which prohibited slavery north of the Ohio River. But that's Jefferson who did that. So I mean, it's not as if he wasn't trying. What he did not understand, and he's a pioneer in intellectual thinking, so he has there's no one to look at, no models, okay, was that as he realized that he had to make compromises with slavery, that affected his thinking about slavery.
I see.
All right? So the guy who had a few years before tried to keep slavery out of Alabama did not try to keep it out of Louisiana when he annexed Louisiana. All right?
I see. I know that for a fact.
Okay, but you understand, in other words, this is a process.
He personally made many land grants to French citizens who helped in the
Exactly.
revolution,
All right.
who went and bought slaves
All right,
and
all right.
settled Louisiana.
But understand, this is a man who starts out, his first bill is to at least permit guys to free their slaves. Okay?
Well, let's tie that in because we want to talk about the present time
Yeah.
too. And I know you're a great historian, but we have to understand that Thomas Jefferson is, in many ways, the father of the modern, or of the Democratic Party,
Right.
of the idea behind the Democratic
Exactly.
Party. And we just had some debates recently in which, as we were discussing earlier, it looks like Barack Obama has the nomination, maybe even the presidency, to lose.
Yeah.
I'm not saying to win, but I'm saying
But
to
that he's
lose.
ahead.
Yeah.
He is
Well-
ahead, and he is the most dynamic speaker, and people are, we're coming a long way from the days when Thomas Jefferson wrung his hands over freeing the slaves, was unable to get very far on it, didn't even bother to free his own slaves at his death, to now we have a African American, in a sense, as most African Americans are, a child of slaves or a descendant of slaves, people brought here in chains.
Right. And he's a
But he's
contender.
not a-
He's
it's
you know,
a true
they say in
contender.
boxing,
Right.
he's a contender. You know what I mean?
Or whatever his immediate
Yeah.
history representing that in,
Right.
in America.
But that's
Yeah.
not his
Look,
immediate
I'll tell you
history.
something.
Yes, that's true. But
Stokely
he'll
Carmichael.
always represent that.
Right. Stokely Carmichael and I worked together from 1985 till Stokely died. All right? And we discussed what actually was accomplished by the civil rights movement. I don't have to tell you, anybody who was around in the 60s that Stokely was like
Huge.
huge, at the same level as Martin Luther King. I mean, how many days of the week was Martin Luther King's name in the paper? How many days of the week was Stokely's? You know what I'm saying? That kind
Sure.
of, I mean, no, there's no argument over
I remember that.
his importance, okay? And we decided, our opinion was that we were strong enough we were not strong enough to achieve all of our goals, which was on both of us, I mean, me and him, I mean,
Yeah.
which was to have a socialist America.
Mhm.
Okay, but we were strong enough to integrate capitalism and imperialism.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so Colin Powell,
interesting.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
literally what happened.
Right.
That's not to depreciate what was achieved. I mean, let me put it this way: if the Palestinians got the rights in Palestine that blacks in the United States have today under imperialism,
Yeah.
they'd have thought they died and went to heaven. All right? I mean, that was a major change. Similarly, in the case of South Africa, with all
Palestinian members of the Knesset,
right, all right,
running strongly for prime minister.
all right, but well, not really. Yeah. Well, there are Palestinian
was the
members
truth.
of the Knesset,
That
but
is
there's
true.
no way they could. By the way, Israel, freaky enough, just about 6-8 months ago, actually had a Druze president for a minute. Okay.
For a minute.
For a minute. Well, a half a day. Don't see.
Well, somebody who had a medical
Yeah,
procedure.
no. The president of Israel got indicted for
Right,
all right,
sexual
and,
harassment or
he
something.
eventually pled guilty to
Yeah.
attempted rape and a few
Yeah.
other,
Nasty things.
Well, hey,
So
it
it's-
reminds me of the Democratic Party and a certain fellow,
Right.
what's her name, Monica.
His initials are.
Lewinsky.
Yeah.
A certain cigar in a black dress with a stain.
Yeah. But at any rate, what the point is that what Obama represents is now he's saying, all right, we got we've had Secretary of State twice, and you don't need a third one. You need a black president, right?
Right.
But he just wrote an article for Foreign Affairs in which he talked about his three role models, his visionaries, as he called them, okay? Franklin D. Roosevelt, Harry Truman, and John F. Kennedy, all right? Franklin D. Roosevelt, this is a role model.
These are like his heroes.
His heroes.
You can't get more
I mean,
establishment
sure,
than that.
Okay. Franklin D. Roosevelt put 140,000 Japanese American citizens into concentration camps, and that started the initial way that got, when you round up that number of people, you got to stuff them somewhere
Right.
before you put them in the concentration camps. So they used the stables at Santa Anita Racetrack, the stables. All right,
gather
that's
people.
Hero one.
Right. Well, here in New York, we used
Okay.
in 2004. Mayor Bloomberg used the pier
Yeah,
for the
okay,
protesters
all right.
there.
But
Pier
that's
61.
that's Obama's Hero one.
yeah,
Right?
59.
Okay.
Yeah.
Obama's Hero 2 is Harry Truman, who's among other things. I mean, he's always in the history books. I mean, you drop atom bombs on civilians twice, you know, and they
People
badmouth
remember
you.
that.
They badmouth you, you know.
It's hard to let
Name.
go of.
But the same guy,
Right.
all right, the Army.
By the way, we're live, and we can take your phone calls at 212-757-1538, and we'll try and answer your questions. And I know that Lenny here has written 6 books. Tell them the books you've written, Lenny.
Well,
Lenni Brenner.
Lenni Brenner.
I only wrote 4 books. I edited 2.
Edited 2 and wrote 4. All right.
Zionism and the Age of the Dictators.
Right.
I wrote that.
The Age of the Dictators being the 1930s and
1940s. Yeah. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
all of them have been. Well, really, Hitler and Mussolini, although Stalin appears. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
I mean, but.
And even FDR was 12 years as president.
But I'm saying,
Yeah.
Zionism and the Age of the Dictators, the Iron Wall, Zionist revisionism from Jabotinsky to Shamir.
These are like specialty books for folks who are interested in the history of Zionism. and
Well,
interested
I
in
mean,
history of this.
Jabotinsky is the spiritual godfather, as it were, of
Right.
Sharon and Netanyahu and what's his name, Olmert.
Right.
They all.
Ethnically, you're Jewish. You don't
Yeah.
practice. You're not a religious. You're
No.
You're not a religious
I've
person.
been an atheist since
Right.
at least 10.
Okay, there you go. So you're ethnically a Jewish person writing these very interesting books. So you have an insider view.
But well, let me put it this way: I am a historian. All right. My books go to either. My 3rd book was called Jews in America Today, meaning 1986. But my 4th book was called The Lesser Evil, and it's a history of the Democratic Party.
I read that book.
All right.
Fascinating.
But the point was that after writing 3 books about Jews, I said to myself, hey, Lenny, you're an American, you know? Write a book about America.
Branch out.
all right? You know, I mean, this
Right.
is a little too crazy. I mean, you know, I mean, all focused on one thing. Write a book about America, all right? And then the first book that I edited was Jefferson and Madison on Separation of Church and State.
Right.
Okay, where I gathered as much as I could. I mean, no one's perfect, but I scraped up everything that I could
And that's the
find.
book that's behind us right now.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
212-757-1538. 212-757-1538. We're here to take your calls. And this is, you know, we're talking about controversial issues, so we know people have opinions about it. We want to hear your opinion. We are live for a purpose. We're live because we like to hear from you, the viewer of Manhattan Neighborhood Network, the viewer of Let Them Talk, and get your opinion and add to the mix of our conversation. So please go over to the phone, 212-757-1538, if you have something to say and something to add to the conversation. We'd be happy to have you on. So we're going to continue. Call us up. Continue. I'm Paul DiRienzo, Miss Joan Marie Musi, our guest Lenni Brenner. This is Let Them Talk, which is heard every Tuesday at 8 p.m. live on Channel 56, Manhattan Neighborhood Network. So we want to hear from you. Okay.
All right, and my 6th book, which again I edited, is called 51 Documents, Zionist Collaboration with the Nazis.
Well, that's the one that got us into so much trouble today.
Yeah.
Now, you're actually saying you have 51 documents that show Zionist is the ideology that's at the heart of the foundation of the State of Israel, collaboration with the bitter enemies of all people in the world, particularly of Jewish people, but all people really, the Nazi Party of Germany. You know, we fought a horrible, bloody war, 50 million people dead, 6 million Jewish people massacred in a campaign of genocide. And you're saying that there was actually some form of collaboration between the people who founded the Jewish state and these dictators like Adolf Hitler?
Yeah. Well, let me
I'm
put it
shocked
this
by
way.
such a statement.
Shocked.
I'm
But let me put it this way.
Someone outraged.
Let me put it this way. In 1973, I read an article in the just published Encyclopedia Judaica about a thing called the Ha'avara, which means the transfer in Hebrew. And it's an article about a trade agreement between Nazi Germany and the Zionist movement in Palestine from 1933 to the war. So I had it in my mind, and I went out to California to Berkeley, and I was there during the 73 Arab-Israeli War. And of course, this is Free Speech Berkeley, you know. So I'm
Where you have a history.
yeah, where I have a history, but the point is that everybody's arguing in the Free Speech Plaza, and I run into a fellow named Shimshon Wigador, whose father happened to have been the editor of the Encyclopedia Judaica, right? So we got to talking. Again, I was talking before the show about chance.
Right, about coincidence.
Chance, all right? So we got to talking, And he told me that, I mentioned this, what's this trade agreement business, And he said, yeah, he'd heard stories about collaboration, but he didn't know. He hadn't followed it, etc., So I decided, hey, Lenny, you're the big history buff,
Right.
all right?
See what you can find.
So, all right, so I sat down and I put this whole thing together, and I got it published in Britain and with an American co-publisher.
Where did you find these documents?
In Zionist publications, etc. One of the most important, an author to collaborate during the war.
What do you mean by collaboration? And let's talk about
All
that
right,
more.
all right. Let me just
define our
follow.
terms.
Let me just finish exactly what I was saying, because that's
Okay.
the perfect answer.
Right.
Okay. In 1940, an organization that in English is called the Fighters for the Freedom of Israel. Okay. They were always known as to everybody as the Stern Gang, after their founder Abraham Stern. When I say everybody, one of their own people afterwards wrote a thing they called us the Stern Gang. I mean, that's how, all right. And the point is that they offered, a written document. They brought it from Palestine to Lebanon, which was controlled by Vichy France at that time, in other words, a German ally,
Right.
and they presented it to a German diplomat and offered to go to war on Hitler's side. If Hitler would send all the Jews in Europe to Palestine, that they would set up a totalitarian Jewish state. Totalitarian means fascist in those days, okay? And they would go to war against Britain, all right?
Well, how can these?
No, wait. Let me just.
All right, go ahead.
Just to verify this, people, I'm sure, going, "What the hell's going on here?"
Yeah, right. Me, including both of us.
Yeah. I found the document in German in a Israeli historian's Hebrew language PhD thesis. Okay. All right.
Wow.
Now wait. Now, there is no doubt about the document's reality, because the Americans let me take it a step. The British found the document in the German embassy in Ankara, Turkey, at the end of the war. In other words, the war's over. Didn't ask the permission of the Turks, they just went over and took over.
See what you got.
Yeah, right? Okay, so they got it. Eventually, everything got sent to the Library of Congress, I believe it was, all right, and then sent back to Germany, all right. And some guy, now, as I say, I didn't find this thing. This guy had it in his PhD thesis, okay. Some Zionists who couldn't believe it actually sent a message to the, a query to the German archives, is this real, and they sent him back not only a copy of the original, okay, but the covering letter that the German ambassador had also, to explain what it was, that kind of thing,
Right.
So
he passed it back on.
yeah. I mean, right. I mean,
how come this was never taken seriously, though? It never really led to.
Okay, because let me put it this way: it was a lot of the collaboration was taken seriously. In other words, in the 30s, like for example, the Vorwärts, which was the leading Yiddish paper here, and the Bund, which was the leading group in Poland, etc., and the communists, they all denounced the Nazis, the Zionists, for collaborating. But not only that, one Zionist group would denounce the other Zionist group for collaborating with the Nazis.
Like
So there
was an internal
all right.
fight between factions.
Right.
Whether this,
to get the franchise,
Right.
right? Yeah. So
we're purer than you, because you're looking.
Yeah. Now, I mean.
I've seen that before.
All right. Yeah. So what happened was that I have the text of a secret document that the Zionist Federation of Germany, Zionistische Vereinigung von Deutschland, for Deutschland, they sent us to the Nazis in June of 1933. Okay. Now all these things, of course, were captured by the Americans and the British after the war. It was published in 1963 in German in Israel. But Lucy Davidovich, who is an American pro-Zionist historian, she translated it, okay, into English, and I just took it from her.
Right,
You
so
know,
these documents are sort of out there. You're
No,
saying.
I mean, they're out there. I mean,
It's not a big
So you didn't have
secret.
to get your own translator to do
Well, I had
this?
to do some of the translating.
Right.
I mean, in other words, and in all cases, what I did was I checked other people's translations.
Of course, Lenni Brenner, who's our guest on Let Them Talk, our number is 212-757-1538. Anybody want to take offense or disagree or agree and say what a great piece of information here, you're free to call. It's free speech. 212-757-1538. Join us on Let Them Talk. Well, it's interesting, but let's put it into context, Lenni, because it was difficult times.
Yeah.
And, here are folks who are facing a lot of repression in their homeland, and they're holding out. Let's put it in the part of the context is the idea, even though the Palestinians really live there, nobody, the communists, the Soviet Union wasn't taking into account their wishes. The French, the English, the Germans, nobody was thinking about the Palestinians who live there. The Turks who owned the land were willingly doing business, selling land that didn't really belong to them, saying that they had the title and not the actual Palestinians who lived there. In many ways, is it any different what went on than what happened on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in the United States when the 7th Cavalry went in on and took revenge for Wounded Knee
look,
and just seized land because there was gold on it?
I have a chapter in my book on the collaboration of the Mufti of Jerusalem, the leading Muslim in Palestine, with the Nazis.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, he not only collaborated with the Nazis, he collaborated with Mussolini. Okay, at a time right after Mussolini had used poison gas against the Arabs in Libya.
Oh, dear.
All right. So I mean, I'm not saying that sweet innocent lamb-like Palestinians are over here and the nasty fanged Zionists are over there. No. But what I do say is, look, if anybody thinks that what the Zionists did, their office to collaborate with the Nazis and their collaboration on various occasions, etc., was okay, then why didn't they publish their history? Why did they leave it to me, their nasty enemy, to publish it? I mean, the Trotskyist movement, for example, publishes its history.
Yes.
Because it's proud of its history.
Exactly.
Okay, so if you think that you did right, you either did right or you did wrong. All right, well, publish your history.
Right.
Now, let me put it this way: what happened in the case of my book, I can't believe it. It happened to me, so I believe it.
Okay.
You're entitled not to believe it. Okay. I was there in Palestine in 1983. The book had already been published, and Menachem Begin had to retire as prime minister. He was going mad. I mean, nothing to do with politics. He was literally going mad. His wife had died, and it blew his mind. All right, and he had Yitzhak Shamir appointed as his successor as prime minister. All right, so Shamir happened to be the head of the Stern Gang that had offered to go to war on Hitler's side. Now, I happen to have a copy of the offer in German and in English with me. All right, so I took it to an English language Palestinian newspaper, and they published the English. Right? Now, the journalists who go to Israel to report Israel, when they want to know what the Arabs are thinking, they would read that newspaper. Mm-hmm. So they read my
Your article
and the text of the document, etc. So they asked Shamir about it. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, but I didn't know that because I had just gone from Jerusalem to London.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
When I got there was an article in the London Times about them asking and him saying, well, there was an idea of approaching them. I opposed it, but I did join them after they abandoned it, etc. So I couldn't believe this. It's nonsense.
So you got an acknowledgement.
Wait. So I went
into
the London Times and I said, look, I'm here on a tour. I know he made up this business about joining it afterwards because I read a book which talks about him being a spokesman for them at the time, at their origins, at their very beginnings, you know. But at any rate, here is their offer to go to war on Hitler's side. So one of the editors comes down and he looks at it and says, Mr. Brenner, we're going to run your letter. I mean, you know, in other words, the documentation was there, you know.
Right.
Right? So then they ran it, and then the next thing you know, I hear that Edward Mortimer, one of their editors, has just come back from the Middle East. I'd like to meet him. So I went and I met him, and I gave him a copy of Zionism, the Age of the Dictators. Next thing I know, Mortimer has written a review, a favorable review of my book in the London Times.
Wow.
All right? Okay? So the next thing I know, I mean, this is all, this I can document because I got the reviews. You know?
It's been published.
Yeah, you know, right? Next thing I know, from Lucy Davidovich, no less, I wrote an article, I wrote a letter to the editor about something she wrote, and she replied about how Lenni Brenner, well, listen, Moscow's Izvestia just wrote a favorable review of his book, you know. So I go to TASS, which was the Soviet news agency at the time, and I say, look, this woman says that Izvestia wrote a review of my book. I don't speak Russian. Can you help me find the review? And the guy goes, Vladimir wrote it. Hey, Vladimir!
Get on the phone.
No, not even on the phone. You know, he's
Oh, he
in the
was
next
right
room.
there. Oh.
Yeah, you know, right?
Right.
So we became buddies, as a matter of
That's
fact. You know, I
great.
mean, we went out several times, you know, and so on.
We only have a minute left,
All right,
so.
all right. Listen, if you guys want to hear more about what I got to say, my nastiness, you know, all right, you can contact me at my at Brenner, BRENNERL 21 at AOL.com.
There's Brenner,
NNERL 21 at AOL.com.
All right, great. Lenni Brenner, thanks a lot for joining us. I wanted to talk more about your views on Barack Obama and on The Lesser Evil, your book about the
Crooked as a
Democratic
dog's hind leg.
You have to come back. We'd
We'll
love
have to
to
come
have you
back
on
and we'll have to
again.
finish. We're going to have you on. We're going to deal with the domestic side of these political issues that you cover so well. Lenni Brenner, historian. We'll see you next week. Thanks for joining us on Let Them Talk. We have a few seconds left. Check out our YouTube site, youtube.com/letemtalk, LETEMTALK. You can watch this show and others on
In case
YouTube.
you missed any shows.
Yes, and most of our shows are up there. Or you can just do a search for Let Them Talk on Google or any other search engine you please. So thanks a lot for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
All right. Thank you. See you next week. Thanks, Lenny. Appreciate it.
That was good.